Don't fry eggs the old way anymore. Today I'm going to share 2 egg dishes that are incredibly easy and extremely visually satisfying, and you can successfully make them at home right away. The first dish is cloud-like fluffy eggs. They look elegant, yet they feel light on the stomach. The second dish is tomato egg soup, egg drop soup style. In just a few minutes you'll have a hot bowl of soup that is gently sweet and tangy, fragrant, and very easy to eat. Tip 1. Cloud-like fluffy eggs. First, I prepare 2 eggs. If you don't have a yolk separator, that's completely fine. I usually separate them using the eggshell itself. It's quick and neat. I prepare 2 bowls in advance, 1 bowl to catch the egg whites, and a small bowl to hold the yolks. Then I gently crack the egg on the rim of the bowl, just enough to create a crack, then split the shell into 2 halves. Now watch this. I hold the 2 shell halves close to the bowl, and gently pass the yolk back and forth between the 2 halves, slowly and carefully. Each time I transfer it, the egg white naturally falls down into the bowl. After just a few passes, almost all the egg white has fallen off. Then I gently place the yolk into the separate small bowl. A small tip is, don't shake too hard and don't let the sharp edge of the shell touch the yolk. That way the yolk won't break and the separation will look very clean. Do you usually separate eggs like this, or do you have a faster method? Which beautiful country are you watching this video from? Let me know in the comments. Now it's time to create the cloud for this egg dish. I use a whisk or an electric mixer, and I beat in one direction. At first, you will see the egg whites are thin and full of large bubbles, and it may look quite hopeless, but stay calm. Just keep beating a little longer and you will see a clear change. Watch closely. After a few minutes, the egg whites start turning opaque white, the bubbles become smaller, and the mixture thickens. I continue beating until I lift the whisk and see soft peaks, meaning it forms a peak that stands up but remains soft, not stiff. That is the perfect cloud stage. Now I heat the pan. The pan should be moderately hot, not too intense. I add a little cooking oil, then use a brush or clean paper towel to spread a very thin layer across the surface of the pan. This dish only needs a thin layer to prevent sticking. We don't need much oil. At this point, I gently spoon the whipped egg whites into the pan. I use a spoon to shape them neatly, then divide them into 2 portions, since we're using 2 eggs. And here is a small tip to make the eggs both beautiful and evenly cooked. In the center of each portion of egg white, I use a spoon to create a small hollow, like making a nest. This hollow will later hold the yolk, and more importantly, it prevents the egg white from being too thick in one spot, helping it cook evenly and hold a nice shape. Now I lower the heat to low. This dish needs to cook slowly so the cloud doesn't collapse. Watch the bottom of the egg. When the bottom has set, and the top egg white has turned completely opaque, meaning it's no longer translucent, that's the moment to place the yolk. I gently place 1 yolk into the hollow of each portion. Then I sprinkle a little salt and black pepper on top for aroma. Then I cover the pan with a lid. The cooking time now depends on how you like your yolk. If you like a soft, runny yolk, I usually leave it for about 2 to 3 minutes after covering. If you want it more set, leave it for another 30 seconds to 1 minute. Don't use high heat, because high heat will dry the egg whites too quickly and cause them to collapse, while we want them light and fluffy like clouds. When you open the lid, you will see the eggs puffed and soft, beautifully white, with the yolk sitting neatly in the center, very visually satisfying. And the most delicious moment is when you cut it in half. The yolk gently flows into the fluffy egg whites, rich but balanced, fragrant, and not greasy at all. This dish is quick for breakfast, and also wonderful as a light meal during the day. Beautiful, simple, and very worth it even though it uses only 2 eggs. Tip 2. Tomato egg soup. After the cloud-like fluffy eggs, now we make an extremely quick, hunger-saving dish that is always delicious, tomato egg soup. I really like this dish because it only requires a few familiar ingredients, but when you eat it, it feels light on the stomach, fragrant, gently tangy, especially suitable for busy days or slightly chilly weather. First, I prepare 2 tomatoes. I wash them thoroughly, remove the stems, then cut them into small bite-sized pieces. If you cut them a bit smaller, the tomatoes will soften faster, release a beautiful color, and the soup will become more fragrant. Next, I have some green onions and a little cilantro. I have already washed them clean. Now I just need to chop them. For the green onions, I trim off the older root ends, then slice them thinly. You can cut them slightly on a diagonal. It looks nicer and smells more fragrant when sprinkled over the soup. As for the cilantro, I gather it neatly and chop it moderately small, not too finely minced, so later when sprinkled into the soup it stays green and the aroma doesn't disappear too quickly. I place the chopped green onions and cilantro into a small bowl, ready to use. Later, when the soup is almost done, I just need to sprinkle them in and the bowl of soup will immediately become fragrant, and it will look fresh and green as well. Now I prepare the eggs. I use 1 to 3 eggs, depending on how much your family prefers. Crack them into a bowl, then lightly beat them. At this step, I only beat until the yolk and white are combined, no need to whip. I add a small pinch of salt to make the eggs more flavorful. Now let's start cooking. I place a pot on the stove and add just a little cooking oil. When the oil is slightly warm, I add the tomatoes and stir gently for about 1 minute to release their aroma. At this point, the heat doesn't need to be high, we just want the tomatoes to bring out their flavor first. Next, I season with a little salt and a little black pepper. I stir a few more times so the tomatoes begin to soften and release their juices. You will see the tomatoes turn redder and look very appealing. Now I pour about 500 to 700 milliliters of water into the pot, depending on whether you prefer the soup thicker or lighter. I cover the pot and cook over medium heat until it comes to a boil. When the water starts boiling, I lower it to a gentle simmer and let it cook for about 3 to 5 minutes so the tomatoes become fully soft and the soup turns a beautiful orange-red color. And here is the most important part to create beautiful egg ribbons in the soup. I open the lid and use a spoon to gently stir the soup in one circular direction so the liquid is moving. Then I slowly pour the beaten eggs in a thin stream into the pot. Pour slowly, don't dump it all in at once. When the eggs meet the hot water, they cook immediately, forming delicate strands and beautiful egg ribbons. After pouring, I wait about 30 to 60 seconds until the eggs are just cooked. At this point, I stir only once very gently so the eggs don't break apart. Remember, if you stir too strongly, the egg ribbons will break and won't look as nice. Finally, I taste the soup again. If it's bland, add a little more salt. If you prefer a softer flavor, you can add a tiny bit of sugar to balance the acidity of the tomatoes. This is optional, depending on your taste. Then I turn off the heat. Now comes the final step to lift the aroma of the soup. I ladle the soup into a bowl and sprinkle some chopped green onions and cilantro on top so the bowl looks fresh and green. And here is something I really love. I add a little freshly ground black pepper, just a light sprinkle, not too much. When black pepper meets the heat, it releases a warm fragrance immediately, softening the tomato flavor and making the bowl of soup bloom with aroma. 1 spoonful feels both warm and comforting. And that's it, hot tomato egg soup, beautiful in color, lightly fragrant, with soft and smooth egg ribbons. This dish is perfect with steamed white rice, and if you prefer something simple, it also pairs very well with bread. So with just a few familiar ingredients, we now have 2 easy and delicious egg dishes, cloud-like fluffy eggs and hot tomato egg soup fragrant with green onions and cilantro, finished with a touch of black pepper for the perfect balance. If you find this video helpful, remember to press like to support Merry Home and subscribe so you don't miss simple and delicious cooking tips every day. Which dish do you prefer, the cloud eggs or the tomato egg soup? And which country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.